you're a small business, freelancer, or just simply working from home during COVID-19, and you're really concerned about the cybersecurity you have in your place at home, then this video is for you. In the next couple of minutes, I would like to emphasize things that you should be doing to increase your security posture at home. And don't be alarmed, it is less complicated or expensive than you might think. So to start with, I would like to cover three main areas. The first being the infrastructure. So everything that your devices, in particular your endpoint you're working on, is connected to. This includes your Wi-Fi network, which can be directly from your router or a dedicated Wi-Fi access point. It includes your LAN, so your actual cables that come from the access point to the router. It includes the router, which is the edge device, which means the device that actually gets you to the bad side of things, the internet. So we'll look at these in the first phase. Number two, we will look at the endpoint. So your PC where you're working on right now. So we'll look at what are the security measures I need to take, make sure that my device is secured. If you do not obtain it from a large corporation, for example, in this case, you should be good, hopefully. And number three, we are looking at things that I think are utterly important and currently just not covered in many cases. What's that? It's passwords and access control. In many cases, we are not taking care good enough around passwords. I cannot make this more stressed. Passwords. I've been bad with passwords, we've all been. The most commonly used password still is password, together with 111111. So we need to make sure that this is not happening anymore. And there are good ways around this, like password managers and a good password hygiene. And the last thing around this password part is the access control piece. So how do I access my applications, my cloud services like O365 from Microsoft, things like OneDrive, Box.com, or any cloud data storage, which I'm probably using a lot. Lastly, I know it's more than three, I think we're now at 5, backup. I think that's something everybody should take care of, but I don't put it into the security bucket too much because it's basically just making sure your data is saved. So let's get started. So the first thing we're looking at is infrastructure. Now, one can ask, do I really need a security infrastructure in my home office? And the clear answer to that is yes and no. Because if you only work with one endpoint in your own home office infrastructure, you have a service provider router that is making sure your access to the internet is kind of basically secured. It's like working in a Starbucks, right? It's the internet that you just brought home. Think about this differently. If I look at things that are very common, like smart TVs, printers, home automation, then I would probably look at further security. So I do have all these things, so let's look at that too. But it's not necessary if you make sure that your endpoint is secured well. Some people might disagree, please comment down here, and that's my personal opinion. So what do we do to secure the perimeter? What do we do to make sure no one comes into our home office? Well, the one thing we can do is use the service provider provided router that has all in the box security. That is in many cases good enough. It will help you to get the most severe and typical cases out. If you want to take it a little bit higher, a little bit more sophisticated, you can look at things like security appliances. These can be either corporate purchased ones, so something like that you can buy on the internet, or you can just build it yourself with little things like this Raspberry Pi, which can run things like open source security, like PS Fence, which is a very common security platform. You can just upload it here. It's a bit more maintenance than these things because they're cloud managed kind of safe ways, but it's absolutely feasible and enough, especially in a home office environment. The next thing you look at is your wireless connection, or I do look at my wireless connection. So I have also a cloud managed access point here. This one is actually one from Cisco Meraki, which does a good job when it comes to just working. You just plug it in and it works. And you should implement a lot of security measures here. Again, focus on passwords, ideally with certificates. If that's too top-notch for you, at least please enable WPA2 personal on your Wi-Fi and set a very strong password. Long, no names, nothing in there, very cryptic, because these things can be broken with so-called dictionary attacks and other ways of getting access to your Wi-Fi. So I recommend make sure that your Wi-Fi, whatever you use, if it's the router ones or just an access point, that you have a password behind it that is not guessable by anybody. How do I manage that password? That's the password manager that we're talking about. Other than that, infrastructure can be a lot more secure. You could go in and do a micro-segmentation, meaning separating the networks you use for home automation, your printer, your endpoint. But that's, to my personal opinion, fetched way too far for a home office. There are way more pressing security threats to your world than a very highly sophisticated security infrastructure. And actually, this is the part that's mostly the most expensive one in a home office environment. So let's go to the things that you can influence, where you really have a control. Now we come to endpoint security. What should you look at endpoint security? Well, it is basically very simple. The typical things you know. Antivirus, anti-malware, anti-access or whatsoever, hostage use prevention systems, or how you would call it. So I'd recommend to go for something that has advanced security capabilities, so to say. That's anything beyond just a virus scanner. Virus scanners are a little bit 90s. They don't help you a lot anymore. They just keep the vast majority out. But those sophisticated attacks like ransomware, you've probably heard of WannaCry, they're mostly not really reliable in terms of these things, especially when they are so-called zero-day. That means they are just appearing. They're very, very new. And those are the things you should be caring for or caring against. My advice, take any of them. They're better than nothing. And as they do differ in features and functionalities, they all help you to protect your endpoint. So I would say start with Microsoft Defender if you have Windows. It's a good start and baseline, or your firewall feature on Mac. But then upgrade to a more sophisticated solution that has advanced cybersecurity features. McAfee, did I say McAfee already? Symantec, endpoint protection, whatever you can get. It's normally around $20 per year subscription, so it's something everybody can afford, and it's a valuable investment. Now we've got the basic endpoint security. Let's talk about something fairly more simple. And this simple thing is passwords. Passwords are incredibly easy when you think about them, but they're very, very dangerous to your cybersecurity. At first, you often, let's be honest, reuse your password. And let's be honest again, it's often something way too simple. What is way too simple? It's your name. Anything that can be related to you in any way. Anything that can be related to any meaning whatsoever. So anything that you can basically memorize. If you can memorize your password, it's not a good password. Simple rule. Unless you're some kind of numerologic genius. But how do you memorize a password then? Well, as I said, you don't. For that, we have password managers. A password manager takes your password, scrambles it, makes it a huge and long password, and uses that for websites, services, logins, etc. It's quite a safe way, at least it's a lot safer than Post-its or Mama1234 or password or 111111 or any other combination. Once you get the hang of it, it's very easy to use. And there's many available. Every browser already has a password manager like Chrome or Safari or Microsoft Edge or however they call it now. Everything has already their passwords managers in there. Don't use them, I would say. They're very inflexible because they're kind of contained in this environment. I would go for some other, also mostly free available password manager like LastPass. So when I use 1Password or others, some ask for a couple dollars, $30 a year, $20 a year, money worth spent, really. Just make sure that you can use the passwords managed there everywhere, because it can be quite handy if you are on the road and you need your iPhone and you've got the password to use anywhere. You go shopping online or you use your files, you upload it to cloud storage. So a password manager is a must. Everybody should have it. Never use a password again that you've used somewhere else. Just don't. It's bad. As I said just now, cloud services, you most likely will be using them, right? You have your data in the cloud because it's easy for your clients to access it, or for yourself if you're on the road. But you want to make sure this data stays only with you or the dedicated person you're trying to share it with. Now we come to a different concept, something that is rather new, and it's called multi-factor authentication. What does it mean in particular? So there are 3 ways to assure that the right person is accessing a certain resource, be it your website, or be it an application or a data resource within your computer or somewhere else. Right? Number 1 is the password. It's something I know, my knowledge of something, a password. We try to make this unknowable by a password manager, so that makes it more secure. Now you have something you know. The second thing is something you possess. This can be either, smartwatch or the omnipresent smartphones we have nowadays, where I can use these devices to push passwords, authentications, etc. to. This is what we call two-factor authentication. So first factor is the actual password I type in. The second factor is the possession that only I have access to. So that is a two-factor authentication. But I just said 3, right? The third factor is inheritance. So anything I am. So that could be my fingerprint or my retina scan. Many of these PCs and phones nowadays do have inheritance checks, so fingerprint sensors or face recognition, though it's very limited to those devices and often not completely feasible. But these password managers and access control managers use them to verify your possession. So two-factor authentication does the following. You enter your password. After you've entered your password, your second-factor device, smartphone, smartwatch, gets notified, and you have to confirm that you actually want to access that resource. That tightens security significantly, and it can give you a little bit more control over what you allow and do not allow. Now you probably think, that must be very difficult and expensive. And both is wrong. My friends here at Duo have told me just now that there's actually, for small companies like yours, 10 people, 10 seats are free. So you can just use that tool. You can download it on duo.com free of charge just to do your business. Now you say it's probably complicated. That is also not true, because what this does, it is just generating one-time passwords that you can link to many of these services around. So you've got Dropbox, for example, that has a two-factor authentication you can configure. You've got Google Mail, that has a two-factor authentication you can configure. You have Office 365 and OneDrive on there. You can configure a multi-factor, or in this case, two-factor authentication. You've got your WebEx or Teams or whatever solution that has a multi-factor authentication. This makes sure that it's you and only you that accesses a resource at a time. And with those security controls implemented, so the infrastructure, where it makes sense, The endpoint protection, it always makes sense. The password manager, which does definitely not only make sense, but I demand you to do this. And lastly, the second factor authentication, which really brings your security to the next level. You're basically safe enough to live a normal life in the home office. So I got one more thing to know. Speaking of passwords, make sure that you change them. Even if they're very complex and safe from your password manager, they might get compromised by some cyber attacks because those big ones like Amazon, Facebook and Co. did not take care enough of their database. So just change them regularly. Second, one thing we haven't looked at right now, which I would highly recommend. It's not really a security measure per se. It is really important. What I'm talking about is a backup. I've spent countless hours restoring data myself. So I know how bad it is to neglect a good backup. Use a backup. Use a backup. You can have Time Machine, you can have some backup solution on your Windows machine that are free or at least worth the money if it's in the cloud, if you're good with that. Or if you have it like me under your computer, which is my case, it's a storage solution, NAS. It's called either QNAP, Synology, or others on the market that you can just use to store your data away. But if there's only one thing only that you take away from this session is forget passwords. Just lose them. They're very insecure. They give the ability for others to compromise you. Thank you very much for your time. I really hope you liked this video and it gave you somewhat of an information. If you have questions or you disagree with what I said, please comment below. If you want to insult me, please be smart. Also, if you like this channel and want to see more, subscribe here, wherever the buttons are, I don't know. Thank you very much and stay secure in these hard times.